Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Mike Annand, and I'm the host today for the Armor Security Privacy, catching up on changes to key frameworks. Before we get started, I'd just like to cover a few housekeeping items. Everyone will be on mute throughout the presentation. It's not that we don't want to hear from you, we actually do. It's just that managing 200 open mics at once is a very difficult task. So please bear with us on that. Also, if you're having technical difficulties or audio problems, please use the chat function to let us know. It might be necessary for you to call in if you're having audio issues, which is strange for me to say, since if you're having audio issues, you wouldn't hear me at the time telling you to use the chat function. But nonetheless, use the chat function for any questions that you may have. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation, but please don't wait to enter your questions. We certainly want you to type them into the Q&A window once you think of them. That way, you'll beat the rush at the end. We know that there will be a lot of questions based on the information we're about to impart. And as always, today's presentation is going to be recorded and made available after the fact. If you missed something or have to leave early, or if you just want to follow up on something, make sure you heard something right, you will have the opportunity to do that. We will send that link to all attendees. And so now it is my pleasure to introduce the Chief Compliance and Data Privacy Officer of Armor, Ms. Nancy Free. Nancy, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. I am Nancy Free, and as you said, the Chief Compliance and Data Privacy Officer here at Armor. I've been working in cybersecurity, technology, assurance, and privacy for more than 20 years now, focused on critical infrastructure, healthcare, retail, and cloud technologies. I'm also on the board of the North Texas ISSA and serve as the Women in Security Director, and I'm happy to be here today.
Well, we are certainly very happy that you have taken the time to join us today. We know you're busy. Let's look at our agenda today. We're going to talk about the changes to the key compliance frameworks. We'll talk about some upcoming changes with privacy laws. We're going to talk about some compliance with Armor and how you can achieve that compliance. And then, of course, we'll jump into Q&A to handle all your questions. To start, let's go ahead and jump into a poll question. Please feel free to use the webinar tool in order to answer the question. Should be visible on your screen. And that question is, where are you and your company currently at in your compliance journey? Are you currently certified or maintaining certification, whether that's PCI, HITRUST, ISO, or SOC 2? Are you actively pursuing these certifications? Are you thinking about certification, or are you not actively seeking certification? Your answers to this survey is going to help us tailor our presentation today, so please don't hesitate.
All right.
Do we have any results to show?
Looks like roughly 47% currently certified or maintaining certification.
Okay, good. I'm glad you can see that. I can't see it on my screen.
Sorry.
No worries.
Yeah, no, we've got probably 16% not actively seeking certification, another 18 thinking about it, and 20% is actively pursuing a certification of some kind. So good participation across the board in terms of where people are.
Fantastic. All right, let's jump into some of the changes to the compliance frameworks. Nancy, you want to tell us what's going on with HITRUST?
Well, sure. So, as you know, a lot of Armor's customers and partners come to us so that we can help to ease their compliance burden. So particularly around HIPAA and PCI requirements, Armor maintains a HITRUST certification to evidence our compliance to HIPAA. And there have been some changes, obviously, in HITRUST in 2020. For example, the PRISMA weighting scale took effect earlier this year, which puts a lot more emphasis on the implementation of control requirements. Gone are the days when you could just get 50% of your points just from the policies and the procedures that you wrote. Now a full 40% of your score is based on how you've implemented those policies and standards, which I think makes a lot more sense. HITRUST also spent a lot of time this year looking into shared responsibility models and implementing inheritance options in their MyCSF platform. Their efforts have made it much easier for companies to indicate the division of responsibilities on a requirement by requirement basis and to pull the scores from their service providers into their own assessments. Our team was able to try this out this year, and let me tell you how much easier it made the entire experience. What an enormous improvement.
Awesome.
And it goes without saying too that COVID has put a big kink into how all assessors are managing to get through their assessments. And HITRUST released their thoughts and perspectives on alternative approaches to evidence gathering and assessment management to help everyone get through the assessment cycle as easily as possible. More information on that can be found at HITRUST Central, but if you don't have a membership to that, I definitely recommend you look into that today. Looking ahead into 2021, companies with concerns around data privacy, so basically everybody, can look for additional enhancements in the CSF to address some of the latest privacy regulations to come down the pipe. Of course, there's also the much anticipated release of version 10, which is expected in late Q1 of next year. We're told this is a significant rewrite of the framework, and I, for one, am excited to see how it shakes out.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about what's coming with PCI.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, what a great segue in terms of major releases. There is PCI 4.0. It's expected in mid-2021, and the PCI DSS version 4.0 will represent the most exhaustive and important updates to the standard in its history. The PCI Security Standards Council took the unusual step to conduct not one, but 2 requests for comments. And companies will still have, a good amount of runway in terms of time to comply with the new version of the DSS. There's going to be an 18-month extended transition period once everything is finalized. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit more about what all they can expect in version 4.0?
I'd be happy to. So with technology and the changes that we've experienced in the last 5 to 10 years, version 4 was desperately needed to address some of the new cloud technologies. So it's going to provide guidance for companies that have or in the process of implementing things such as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, containers or serverless technology, and the like. We're really seeing a shift from prescriptive to descriptive. I've always really appreciated PCI for the fact that it was a very prescriptive, sort of a one-size-fits-all framework. But based on the changes that are coming and based on the changes in technology that we've been seeing, you can see that companies that are integrating with these different cloud technologies, that we need to move to a more subjective model, if you will. And so given that, we're going to have focus on outcomes more than actually the implementation of specific controls. It's going to be more about the spirit of what you're doing as it addresses the different requirements. Now, there are some major updates to access management. Some of those are going to be in line with the things that are changing with NIST as far as password management. So one of the major things is going to be multi-factor authentication will be required for all access into the CDE, not just for administrative purposes. Passwords for systems and applications will be required to change every 12 months. Now that's a big change. And so what does that mean to people, right? It's also going to be a 15-character password. I believe previously it was a smaller password. So when you're thinking about your compliance programs, you're going to have to go with the more restrictive, right? So if PCI is only requiring a change every 12 months, but HITRUST still requires you to change your password every 90 days, you're going to have to change your password every 90 days. If HITRUST only requires an 8-character password, but PCI requires a 15-character password, you're going to have the 15-character password. And that assumes that you're both HITRUST and PCI certified. So just keep that in mind when you're making your changes. Access privileges will have to be reviewed on a regular basis. That should be done already, but now they're making it mandatory. And vendor accounts are going to have to be turned off unless they're needed, or they should be active only when needed. And they need to have monitoring on them. So that's a new change as well. So we've been talking about this customized implementation where organizations are going to implement the controls based on what they're doing, correct? So it's not going to be so prescriptive where PCI is telling you must do A, B, and C in order to meet this requirement. If you can show that you're meeting the requirement by doing C, D, and E, then that's going to be fine to get you certified. It's going to make the assessment a little bit more difficult for QSAs as a result of having this more subjective sort of control environment, but it's certainly going to make it easier for people who are adopting these new cloud technologies. And then, of course, data security. There's going to be a strengthening of practices around data security. Encryption will be required on all transmissions, even on protected, trusted networks. So keep in mind that that's a change that's coming. And then, of course, continuous compliance is going to be emphasized as well with security awareness training that needs to involve both phishing and social engineering. And then you're probably going to want to implement some sort of cloud security posture management technology to keep your cloud environments in line with your security policies. And then, of course, like I mentioned, it's going to make the audits longer and more expensive just based on, the different set of criteria and controls that QSAs are going to have to deal with. So be prepared when you're working on your budget. It may cost you a little bit more in the coming months.
We have a couple questions coming in, Mike. So one is around HITRUST, whether it is specific to the US or to Canada too. I'll say HITRUST is not geographically specific. HITRUST has done a good job in their CSF framework of looking across dozens of different frameworks and kind of merging them into a single framework for people to comply with. So it's not that it has to be just strictly focused on the US or Canada or any other part of the world. They really do a good job of looking at lots and lots of different types of, whether it be privacy laws and regulations or international standards, NIST standards. They really take a very broad look across all types of controls and consolidate it down in their CSF. So it's definitely not geographically focused. The other question that came in was, is a draft version of PCI 4.0 available for public viewing? And that I can say I'm not sure. ARMR is a participant in the council, so I know that we have seen a copy of it, but I'm not sure that it is publicly available. Mike, do you know by chance?
I don't believe it is available for public consumption just yet. It will be released next year, and then you will have an 18-month period in order to close out any existing assessments that are going on, and to also give you time to implement those new controls that are within version 4.
Okay.
So thank you very much for that question. Nancy, let's talk a little bit about some additional security frameworks.
Sure. So there are some additional frameworks that are going to be getting some attention this year, including the newly released revision 5 of NIST Special Publication 853. This release was long awaited and highly anticipated, at least in the compliance circles that I run. And I know we're a little nerdy in that sense, but we were very excited to get that finalized this year. As you'd expect, there were many changes in this framework, which covers security and privacy controls for systems and organizations. Overall, as you read it, you can feel the changes in the way it was written. The new framework and the new revision is far more direct in its language and making it much easier to understand and to implement. You'll also notice that privacy controls have been moved forward, showing greater alignment with international standards like GDPR and other US standards such as GLBA and HIPAA, all of which deal with a form of PII. We don't have time to get into all the changes here, but let's quickly highlight 2 new inclusions in R5 being runtime application self-protection, or RASP, which is covered in the System and Information Integrity section, and interactive application security testing controls, which are covered in the System and Services Acquisition section. Now, for those who may not be as familiar, RASP is a security technology that is built or linked into applications or application runtime environments, and it's capable of controlling application execution and detecting and preventing real-time attacks. And then interactive application security testing is, it's just what it sounds like. It's application security testing that performs more efficiently than previous methods could. Some might say it converts functional testing into security testing, but All in all, the relevance that these are being added into NIST 853 means that these technologies are now mainstream. It is also a recognition that security instrumentation is critical to assessing the security risk of specific software vulnerabilities. It empowers developers to build and release secured applications, catching those security flaws before an application is launched. So very happy to see these additions and how NIST is moving the bar forward. Other standards you may be hearing more about are ISO 27017 and 27018. If you're using it with ISO 27001, which sets out specifications for an information security management system, 27017 provides enhanced controls for cloud service providers and cloud service customers. Unlike other standards, the 27017 does a good job of clarifying both parties' roles and responsibilities to help make cloud services as safe and secure as the rest of the data included in a certified information management system. ISO 27018, on the other hand, is that code of practice for protecting PII in public clouds that are acting as PII processors. This is one that I've been asked about a few times now in customer due diligence reviews. You use this in conjunction with the privacy principles in ISO 29100 for the public cloud computing environment. It's applicable for all types and sizes of organizations that provide information processing services as PII processors via cloud computing under contract to other organizations. It can also be relevant to organizations acting as PII controllers, but keep in mind that PII controllers may also be subject to additional PII protection legislation, regulations, obligations that don't necessarily apply to PII processors. So 27018 is not intended to cover all the additional obligations. One other thing I'll add, I didn't get it into the slide deck, but I'll also call out ISO 27701, which has a very useful appendix that maps to GDPR requirements. It's just generally a good framework that will allow you to manage your privacy program in the face of multiple privacy requirements and regulations. It's just a matter of sorting out which of these might work best for you.
Wow, that's a lot of numbers.
That's a lot of numbers.
And a lot of updates. Thank you very much for that.
I hope you were taking notes.
I think you lost me on 17. That's okay.
I wish they could find a way to name those better instead of just enumerating them all. It really just, it's a lot to say.
So maybe ISO 27000 privacy or something like that.
Maybe, yeah, just something with fewer numbers.
Absolutely.
A lot easier for this Texan to articulate.
Speaking of privacy, let's go into our next poll question. So how well do you feel your privacy program at your organization is being managed? Do you feel like you have a solid approach? Do you think you're pretty close to where you want to be? Are you a little lost but getting there, trying to figure it out? Or do you know where you you need one, but you're currently winging it, or you have no idea what you're doing right now and you're just trying to stay afloat? So again, Nancy, I can't see the results, so if you can.
As soon as they pop up, I'd be happy to share.
All right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next bit. We're going to talk about all the changes with privacy, because it is a little bit of the Wild West going on right now with privacy and all the changes we're having. Every day,
something new in the privacy front.
It's true. Absolutely.
All right, so how well do we feel the privacy program is being managed? We've got roughly 18% saying we've got a solid approach.
Awesome.
The biggest majority, 46% saying we're close to where we want to be. But beyond that, we've got, what is that? Let me do quick math. 36% that are listing this as a 3 or below in terms of, are you sure we even need to have one? I don't know quite what I'm doing, but I'm winging it, or we're kind of lost. So I can't blame you there, because it is a lot of information to take in on a just everyday changing basis. It's a whole lot to manage. So I can appreciate the idea of being lost a little bit.
Absolutely. So let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk about some of the changes that we're seeing with privacy laws.
Sure. So I'll start out. IAPP this week actually released an article where Peter Swire, who is a senior fellow at the Future of Privacy Forum, was commenting that this is the year he believes that the U.S. is on the cusp of passing comprehensive federal privacy legislation. This is something I hope for every year, but I honestly, I look at government and all the things that they go through on a day-to-day basis, especially in the midst of a pandemic, and I think, who's really looking at this? But I truly hope that this is, with the newly elected Congress, I know that there's thoughts that they may have the best chance at a comprehensive federal legislation plan. I certainly hope that that is the case. It's desperately needed. Certainly the actions that we're seeing at the state level should inspire some of that legislative action. Companies that are already working to comply with the CCPA, there's new legislation that's come around, like the California Privacy Rights Act, which was passed in November. That's changing requirements as well. Washington is also in on the action. It's got its third iteration of the Washington Privacy Act. It narrowly failed the House last year, and it may be more likely to pass in the next go around. And if it does, I would think it'd be likely to influence other states that are interested in passing similar protections for their own residents. Honestly, if all of that doesn't start to increase the momentum towards a federal privacy law, I just genuinely don't know what will.
Do you have any recommendations for our folks in the audience that may be dealing with all of the different privacy legislations? Is there anything that can help them kind of bring it into view for them so they know what they need to do?
Well, honestly, it's just keeping abreast of all the different feeds, and to keep on top of all the different privacy things that I have to look at. Armor manages our privacy program with a tool that we've purchased that's kind of a global look at privacy, if you will. I look for resources from NIMITY are actually fantastic, as well as the IAPP. There's countless webinars and podcasts and just everything in the world to kind of help people stay abreast of the things that are happening in the US and abroad in terms of data privacy. I would just say, take a look at in as many resources as possible so that you have a firm understanding, or partner with a firm that will give you a great privacy platform so that you can stay abreast of everything that's going on worldwide as it relates to privacy. And from that perspective, then it's just a matter of doing simple risk assessments. You have to really take a look at your organization and understand, just because things are happening at a distance does not necessarily mean that they do not apply to you. There's all kinds of laws as it relates to individual privacy that, companies that are sitting much further away think, oh, well, that's how many people thought when GDPR came out, well, I'm not doing anything there. It doesn't apply to me. Well,
right.
Guess what? It applies to a lot more than you think. So
yeah,
just getting a good firm understanding of laws that are being passed anywhere that you're doing business, anywhere your customers are doing business, and taking that time to do a privacy impact assessment to see, is this going to be something that is relevant to your company?
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thinking about Europe, things that are going on there. I know I'm getting a lot of calls this week about Brexit and what things are happening there. And, my responses were all kind of in a wait and see mode. I know the British and the EU Commission have been trying to agree to a trade deal before this transition period ends on December 31st, but they've been deadlocked for months over 3 key issues. So phishing, and that's phishing with an F, not with a PH. On the UK's ability to diverge from EU standards, and on legal oversight of any deal. So this is a very crucial week in those discussions. More will be revealed by week's end, and we're kind of watching and waiting along with you to see how it all works out. Of course, we have to also look back. You can't look at the end of 2020 without talking about the overturning of Privacy Shield this summer. At this point, we're also waiting for public comment to wrap up on standard contractual clauses, and that should also be later this week. I think tomorrow, actually, it's when that's supposed to all come out. There's lots of discussions on transporter data flows that are ongoing, but I mean, this situation as a whole is probably the biggest risk to data flows being cut off from Europe to the United States that I've ever seen. Just another area where we're in wait and see mode as we negotiate with Europe going forward. Globally speaking, privacy continues to be a focus everywhere in countries around the world. So a few examples that we have here. China is expected to pass a comprehensive legislation that is similar to Europe's GDPR. India is also very close to adopting sweeping data protection reform. In Canada, legislation has been tabled to update their federal privacy legislation, the Personal Information and Electronic Documents Act. And in Brazil, they've passed down the General Data Protection Law. So clearly, there's no slowing down anywhere in the world as it relates to data privacy. For those of you that marked that you're winging it or that you haven't even started to consider what's required of you, I encourage you to dive in now and dive in deep, because there's a lot happening everywhere, and you just really cannot afford to delay getting a program together to address existing laws and the things that are upcoming in this space.
Absolutely. We have one question that came in that says, do you find IAPP of good value?
I do, yes. Oh my gosh. Between the educational content, the training courses that they have, regular articles and newsletters, I do find IAPP to be very useful.
And it's asking, what resource does Armor use for global privacy? Can you mention that tool, or do you want to keep that?
I don't suspect that we have any reason not to. I use the TrustArc platform to manage our data privacy platform. It's fantastic. Just the ability to get a firm look of everything within your privacy program, whether that be your data flow diagrams, whether that be individual risk assessments or privacy assessments as it relates to different laws around the world. It's the most, and I've been in technology for so many years, and every platform will give you the oh, it's only so easy, we'll have you up and running by the end of the week and it'll be great. But that's not usually the case. But I can say that this one has been fantastic, that I could sit down, plug in a few core bits of information, and immediately have a map of the world where I could dive in and say, these are all the existing laws that are relevant to me. This is why they're relevant to me. And here are assessments to make sure I'm doing what I need to do to adhere to the requirements of those laws. So it's been a fantastic resource. I hope they're okay with me mentioning their name, but only nice things to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a great tool.
And then the other question is, how quickly does Armor implement privacy law updates into Armor Anywhere and CSPM? I don't have the answer to that, but I will try and find that answer. I want to say that CSPM is part of a subscription service that gets those updates and puts them in programmatically. That I'm not 100% sure of, so I will have to follow up with that person. If you would, please send me an email with that question. My email address is mike.annand@armor.com, and I'll make sure you get an answer to that.
Well, and I can probably fill in a little bit on that too. So I think what people tend to blur a little bit as it relates to compliance with privacy laws and compliance with frameworks is that there is a distinct difference there. It's, you think about, how do I pass PCI? Well, you have a list of requirements. You either pass them all or you don't, and that determines whether you pass or fail. Laws don't necessarily have, they don't even necessarily have audit requirements, but it does give you kind of broad strokes of the things that you need to be looking for. So I'm not sure that you would see within those kinds of tools specific things to those laws. I mean, I haven't dug in as deeply as I should have on some of these tools to see just what is there, but it is much more a understanding of the data that you are gathering, the reasons that you have it. Are you a processor? Are you a controller? What does that mean for your organization? There's a lot more personal accountability that you need to look at, as opposed to looking at a framework. Frameworks are great in terms of making sure that you have all that general information together in terms of how are you, what are your approaches on protecting data? What is your approach on gathering it and where it's stored and how it's maintained? That's all great information that you could get out of a framework, but in terms of how it applies to the specific law and how it applies specifically to your company, that's something you're going to need to look at on a much more kind of intimate basis within your company and the data that you're collecting.
Awesome, awesome response. To answer the specific question about the name of that tool is Trust Arc. Although I do like Trust Dart. I think that would be kind of cool. Let's see, is Armor upgrading its WEF to support elliptic ciphers for perfect forward secrecy? That is on the Armor development roadmap. I don't have a specific date for you right now, but we are in the process of changing out some equipment that's going to facilitate that. So that will be coming. Let's move on to achieving compliance with Armor. And what does that mean? Well, so Armor is contractually bound to its customers to maintain PCI DSS compliance, HITRUST compliance, SOC 2, and ISO 27001. And within those programs, a certain amount of your compliance burden is going to be alleviated through the things that we provide to you as our customers. Some of those things you can see here are intrusion detection, prevention, IP reputation filtering, vulnerability scanning. At the server layer, you're going to get some FIM protection, OS patching, malware protection, and log and data management. And then there are some additional administrative controls. Earlier, we talked a little bit about CSPM, or Cloud Security Posture Management feature, that is now available within the Armor Anywhere suite for customers in public cloud. What this allows us to do is to provide you with the ability to easily detect, monitor, assess, and remediate anything that is not in line with your security policy in the cloud. For security leaders, what does that mean? It means that you can monitor these things regularly and you keep them in line. You can reduce and manage accidental risk. That's really important given today's definition of cyber risk. It's really two sides of the same coin. You have your intentional cyber risk, which involves, your traditional hackers or people that mean to do damage to you and your business. And on the other side of that coin, it's the accidental or unintentional cyber risk, which are configuration errors or user errors. And so CSPM is going to help you detect those errors and bring things back in line. It also helps with shadow IT. And for those of you who don't know what shadow IT is, given the proliferation of cloud technology, any organization within, or any department within your organization, is capable of spinning up assets in the cloud. And the problem that creates is this is done outside of the structure of IT. And a lot of times these things are spun up without the necessary security controls. CSPM is going to detect those new instances. They're going to scan them, and they're going to alert IT to their existence and how they are out of security compliance. And so that's really important going forward, especially as you're trying to maintain compliance on a continual basis. It's going to help you keep things on track. There's always going to be some drift as changes happen or new code is put in, and we want to be able to identify that as quickly and as soon as possible. So it reduces the opportunities for those that are going to be operating on the intentional side of the cyber risk coin. And so what does that look like? Well, at the top, you'll see you have all your regulatory requirements, you have threat intelligence, you have impact assessments. All this feeds into your risk assessment. And out of that comes your risk treatment and your tolerance profile, which leads into a master security policy, or the thing that you're going to use. If, like, say you have PCI as a requirement, that's going to dictate how you're going to manage that environment. And so what it does is it automatically scans both your public cloud or your other cloud environments, and it's going to give you a laundry list of things that you need to address. Here's an example of a PCI report. It's saying, if you look down there, that 56% of the things that it's checking are failing. And so it'll give you the specific control, like down below, you can see 2.1.1 for wireless environments connected to the cardholder data environment, or transmitting cardholder data. To change the wireless defaults, so it's actually detecting that the default that came with that device has not been changed, so that needs to be addressed. And so just simple things like that. If you have an S3 bucket that is running in the wild without protections on it, it's going to alert you to that. And so that's very important going forward, and something that you may find interesting. Let's open up to more Q&A. We've addressed some of these as they've come in. I hope you guys have more questions. We're here, we're available. Let's take advantage of Nancy's huge wealth of knowledge, and let's not let this opportunity go away. It looks like we don't have any new questions at this time, but we certainly have the time for you if you want to. I would like to add that we have a couple of resources that are available for you today that are available for download within this tool. And if you missed that opportunity to get them from the webinar tool, you can also find these items plus a myriad of other items at armor.com/resources. Let's see, question coming in. Will this be part of Coalfire or is this a separate feature? If you're talking to CSPM, this is not part of Coalfire. This is actually going to be integrated into your Armor agent and will be available within the Armor Management Portal. I will stress that this is for public cloud environments and not for Armor Anywhere with secured hosting. That may be something that's on the roadmap coming in the future. I can't say for sure, but at this time it is only for people that are in public cloud. Is there an additional feature add-on to the Armor Anywhere product? There is other things that are coming with the roadmap. I want to speak out of turn. I know we are talking about adding endpoint protection. That is something that is coming. It's in the final stages of development. There should be some announcements coming out. I don't want to give too much away on that. Let's see. I see there's more questions coming in. Bear with me as they pop up here.
Well, Mike, I have a question for you. So one of the things you asked me was about the different resources that I look at to stay on top of privacy. Do you have any recommendations on things you keep up with in terms of just compliance across the board, or maybe
Yes.
even related to PCI 4.0?
There are a bunch of great resources out there. The PCI Guru is one of my favorites. He really tackles some very in-depth questions about scoping your environment and what needs to adhere to the requirements and what doesn't. So anytime I have a question about what somebody is doing, that's one of the first places I go. Of course, the council themselves, the PCI Council, they publish tons of guidance documents. So those are always a fun read. And then there's a wealth of stuff that's available from HITRUST. And then of course the AICPA is always publishing, guidance documents and books. So I would go to the source first, and then, to a lesser degree, take the sources on the internet with a grain of salt. But if you look at multiple sources and you see, a common thread, you can probably take that as a pretty good indication that it's legit. Let's see, what do we got here?
I see, but one of my favorite questions I've seen is, what is your favorite framework? I know this is something we actually discussed in our teams about having if you were to have a framework death match, what would be the framework that would win out? Because that's the level that we're talking talking about some of these things that we like to think about if frameworks could go head to head. But I will say I'm a big fan right now of the release 5 of NIST 853. I think that they just really did themselves a great service by changing the language in it and making it so much less ambiguous. The previous versions of NIST, at least in this framework, have been very, I'll say, very dryly written. Is that fair? Because it's very, organizations will, and it kind of fills in the blanks. Now it's very action focused. The words are very, employ this and implement that. It's very direct language. It's very consumable language, and I think it gives a good broad covering of lots of different, whether it be risk-based, privacy-based, lots of different areas of control. So while we had talked in the past that PCI was like a good, nice base framework, I think I would shift maybe to 853 R5.
I'm going to say I don't like any of them. That's my answer.
You're not allowed to say that.
So it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish with certification. I think SOC 2 is one of my favorites because it is one of the subjective frameworks, if you want to call it a framework, and it applies to more businesses than I think HITRUST or PCI might. So Certainly, it is a great marketing piece to show that you are SOC 2 compliant or assessed, and you have a certification, or not really certification, but you have a report to share with people that will help them understand, your business practices and how you're secure. So that's just my own personal view. I see that there's a question that says, does Armor offer a CSPM feature for its hosted operation in AMP, and why or why not? So the answer to that right now, as I alluded to earlier, is no, it is not available in the hosted environment, and there's really a reason for that. The greater need was for the public cloud, where people need help to understand that technology and how it may be insecure at any given time. With our hosted environment, there's a myriad of other tools to help you secure your environment, and we're constantly looking at the output from the IPRM or the DDoS protection or the HIDs and NIDs that's available there, as well as the FIM. So you actually have a SOC that is looking at multiple tools within the hosted environment to maintain security. And we're constantly working on that environment to increase the security. I would like to see that someday, that we can have one of those tools or CSPM for our hosted environment, but as it is today, we don't have that. And for that, I'm sorry, but it's just really, it's a tool to protect, public cloud environments. What else do we have here? What is the difference between NIST 853 Rev 5 versus NIST CSF?
I can take that one. So the NIST CSF was actually created in response to Executive Order 13636, and it's very, very high level. It's more consumable, say, at the executive level as opposed to the practitioner level. So if you're looking at something to really get your hands into and implement, I would look more to 853. It's not that you can't, pull out and glean a lot of good stuff out of the CSF, but in my own experience, I think that it's easier to look at 853 as a good overarching platform there, or good overarching framework.
So to follow up on that one,
sure.
When you make a change from one revision number to another, is there a given time frame, or do you stick with a specific revision for a certain amount of time?
I mean, anything is going to have a timeline to transition. NIST has not taken steps at this point to completely wipe out or decommission R4 as a framework, and they have in other. I mean, if you go to their site and look at all their special publications, you can see over the years ones that have been taken down or replaced by other frameworks or other iterations. They have not done that with R4 of this yet, and I mean, R4 is still a good solid thing. I think with anything, especially in the space of cybersecurity and technology, you really always need to be kind of looking to see, what are these frameworks, what are they saying? What is the newest kind of guidance and the new shift in how people are looking at things? Because, I mean, we all know technology doesn't sit still. Cybersecurity doesn't sit still. Things are constantly changing, and focus is shifting, and new threats are coming in, and you have to find new ways to look at that. And frameworks can only be, even at their best, a snapshot in time of reasonable practices to give you reasonable assurance about your environments. I mean, no framework can move as fast as technology or security in ways that attackers are coming for you, or risks to your organization. So I would suggest people always look to the most current versions of their frameworks, and actively, as organizations produce new versions of their frameworks, actively be working through them and finding new ways to move their program forward. The further you sit back on a framework, you're just further and further outdated to the threats and the risks that your company is facing. So you're really doing a disservice by sitting back.
Very good answer, Matt, for sure. Okay, so I have one here that says, I saw that Armor is one of the top 100 places to work. It is. What do you like about working at Armor and helping customers achieve compliance outcomes?
I can take that. I love working at Armor.
I do too, but you go first and then I'll follow up.
So I've been with Armor, I'm going up on 4 years here, and I love the interaction with my peers. I love the ability to make a significant difference either within our product and our own internal environment, as well as with all of our customers and partners. I can't tell you how frequently I'm on the phone with our various customers or partners to help them through questions that they may have, whether it be on audits that they're going through or concerns about new laws and regulations that are coming their way and what all these things mean. I have only found significant appreciation for the knowledge and skills that we can bring to the table. And I will say I've not worked in an organization for a while where I felt more more able to contribute and more just part of the full organization. So it's been really a blessing to have my voice heard. There's also a very strong diversity and inclusion team within Armor, and I've as a company, we've done a lot in this past year, especially to hear great conversations where we've, through the Black Lives Matter impacts over the summer, or Mental Health Awareness Month, and we've had people be able to come out and speak to the organization as a whole and share their experiences, and we all, I think, kind of rise together in hearing everyone else's stories. And I just, on every front that I can think of, I can't think of a thing that I don't love about working at Armor. It's been terrific.
I have to agree 100%. I think the thing that means the most to me is it's not just talk at Armor. You see them implementing the things that they talk about, whether it's the things that you see in the core values, whether it's being a security company. I'm astounded by the intelligence of the people around me, and I've always held fast to the saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? I love working with people that I can learn from, right? And Armor is full of people like that. The other thing I like about Armor is that they're serious about the growth, right? I want to say that half of the company, or at least close to half, is sales and marketing, and they really put out quality artifacts and efforts to reach customers and reach potential customers and show them what Armor can do. And to see a security company that's actually doing security in the right way and not treating compliance as a byproduct of security, actually pushing compliance as as we all know, is something that you have to have. Security is nice. Well, security you have to have too, but compliance, you're mandated to have these things. So I like the fact that our company is encouraging and creating that culture of compliance and that culture of security, because it makes my job so much easier to have people that maybe are outside of GRC or security understand how important the things that we do on a daily basis are. So we are always hiring too, so go to armor.com/careers and take a look. I think every week I look and there's a few positions out there that maybe someone out there might be interested in coming and join the team. Please, we'd love to have you.
Actually, I see a question. I'm very much interested in becoming a compliance professional. What steps do I need to take certification-wise to reach this goal? I don't know where you are on your journey or in your career. I will say lots of people come to compliance from different areas. I've seen some come from, say, internal audit, some come from networking or security, or any other part of help desk. I've seen people come from all different walks of life into compliance specifically. If you're very, very brand new and just trying to break in, I would look at oseg.org, and that's oceg.org, and they have a good general GRC certification that kind of gives you a good broad base of just all things from a governance, risk, and compliance perspective, and give you a good base level of knowledge in the industry. If you're a little further along, then ISACA, ASACA.org has got their CISA is the next certification you might look at there, or the CGEIT, which is the Certified Governance of Enterprise IT. Each of those has got more significant levels of experience requirements. So I think the CISA, I believe, has 5 years prior experience, and the CGEIT has 10 years prior experience. So it's just all going to depend on where you are in your career when you make that pivot into compliance. But it's a fantastic field. I tell you, I love every day learning new things from a technology perspective, and my investigative and audit type genes kind of kick in too, and I love getting in and sorting things out. So it's a good field to be in for sure. And everybody's got to be compliant. So there's not fewer regulations coming down the pipe. There is only more. So it is a very solid profession to be in for sure.
Yep. I know we have a couple other questions that are coming in here. Before we get to those real quick, I'd just like to let you know that there will be a survey at the end of the webinar today. I implore you, please take the time, fill that out. It helps us to create better content. It lets us know the things that we're doing right and the things that we're not doing right, so that we can create better content for you going forward. So please take the time to fill out that survey. Let's see. Does Armor help their customers create policies? Nancy, I'm gonna let you address that first, and then maybe I can fill in.
I would say not currently. It's not something that we currently offer. Something I would like to see us roadmap is potentially having some more just general templates that customers could use as they're on their own path. I think a number of Armor customers come to us and they're somewhat small and maybe don't necessarily understand all of the, if you're somewhat of a startup business, even maybe you don't understand all the policies and all the things you have to have in place, and it can be overwhelming. I mean, policy is very focused on every single word has a meaning, and you have to know exactly what you need to say in order to not only comply, but do the right things for your business. So I think if we had, maybe looking at that in the future is something we could offer, but it's not currently on our roadmap.
I agree with everything that Nancy said. It's also very difficult because the policies really need to outline how you conduct your business, and it's hard for Armor to really dictate how you're going to do that. We can provide assistance, or like Nancy said, maybe provide a template, but really it's going to be incumbent upon you to identify the things that you need to do in order to comply with your regulations, and customer A and customer B may be completely different, so it's really hard for us to get involved with that. So we try to keep a distance at that. But thank you for that question. That was a good one. Let's see. Can you talk about any recent CCPA and New York Shield changes?
I can't speak to New York Shield changes. The CPRA that they passed in November in California, I know, is expecting to have a significant impact on some of the definitions that we have currently around PII and other areas of privacy. And I know that it is also creating an organization of oversight within California that is supposed to, I think, take effect in terms of enforcement of CCPA in July of next year. So that's going to be interesting to kind of see how that all comes to pass. I'm always surprised when people say, oh yeah, in 6 months we'll have this whole new regulatory body up and working. Yeah, I mean, not in my experience. You don't tend to work that fast, but yeah, we'll kind of wait and see there.
All right.
Yeah.
Last question. Someone asked, how do we get some of that Armor gear? You probably saw me drinking out of my Armor cup. If you go to armor.com, you can give us your email and we will send, and your address, and we will send you a pair of Armor socks. Beyond that, I would suggest maybe getting in contact with your Armor Success Manager and telling him, hey, I want one of those fantastic Armor cups. We've got other stuff too, so reach out, please. We're happy to get you swagged up.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like that's all the questions that have come in. I don't see.
Actually, I see one more on the difference between, oh no, sorry, we did that one already. A cross-reference between PCI version 4 with NIST and ISO frameworks. I don't know that it's out there yet because 4.0 is not fully finalized yet, but resources in terms of looking at cross-functioning with different frameworks. Certainly, HITRUST has done a great job of mapping lots of different control frameworks into their overarching CSF. You can also look at tools like UCF. which is the Unified Compliance Framework, that you can really kind of pull together different frameworks and get a Venn diagram to see how those different things pan out. And that's a fairly inexpensive subscription too, if you have a lot of different requirements that you're facing, to kind of see how it all kind of merges together.
Awesome. Well, that's just about all the time we have. I don't see any new questions, so I'm going to take this opportunity to first thank you, Nancy, for coming in and taking time out of your busy day to help us understand the changes that are coming and providing some of your expertise. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Good. Secondly, I'd like to thank everybody in the audience for taking time out of their day to attend this webinar. We hope that you have found it instructive. Please, if there are any questions that you have that we did not get to, please send us a note. You can put those also in the survey at the end of the webinar. And have a great day. We appreciate you.